Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our student attendance chronic absenteeism study committee. It is our last study committee meeting. Very excited to be here. Members, thank you for the treacherous drive in. I witnessed it personally. This was an interesting ride to the Capitol today. Especially the fact the weather is so nice. You wonder what is occurring, but we've got members, a very good schedule, very good group to discuss here with and hear from as we are working for our recommendations to be developed in our plan. I do want to publicly thank y'all for your attendance, also your communication to me throughout this whole process of this study committee, as well as today. We're going to talk to y'all and hear your voice as we are starting to wrap this up and get that final report done. Let me mention, like we always do in anything in education, we want to talk about our students and our teachers and how important they are to us and what they do. Matter of fact, I try to make mention much as I can that teachers are daily heroes. And I'm always proud of the work of what teachers do and how they change lives and how they're building this country so powerful for us. If I can, let me ask Chairman Dubnik, do you mind opening us up with a word of prayer here, and I will click on you right there.
Thank you. Pray with me. Lord God, I come to you again this morning just with a thankful heart and a humble heart, Lord, as I look out at the sunshine and the blue skies. I'm just reminded of you and all that you have done for me and for each of those represented here in our lives, Lord. I thank you for the traveling mercies that you've given to all of us, and I ask for the same as each one in this room, in this building, goes back to their family. Lord, just keep us safe. Lord, for the children, the parents, the teachers, administrators in this state, I just ask for your blessing, continued blessing during this school year. Lord, just keep those minds sharp and eager. And Lord, for the parents, I just pray that they would be engaged and involved and loving and supportive and caring. We thank you for the opportunity to serve those children and those families as we don't take it for granted. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Thank you. There you go. Thank you, Chairman. And let me also point out here as we're studying this, members, that what a great start to school year. I think you're very aware the FTE count is being finalized, has come in, so we'll have a lot of data on how many children we have and in what areas they are. But I have been able to visit a lot of school systems of recent, and what a fabulous job that is being executed within our school systems here in Georgia, and proud of those students, teachers, and administrators. With that, Patrick, if I can, let's look at the agenda just for a second and see. We first have up today. Members, let me point out, I believe we have two members online with us that are zooming in, so you'll hear me from time to time seeing if there's a response from them as questions occur. But I believe we have a couple. Okay, let's open up right here, if I can, with the School Social Workers Association. Corey Lowe. Corey, are you in the room? Let's look and see if Corey's here. I do not see Corey has made it in. Maybe the same problem many of us have with the social worker. So we'll juggle the agenda here, because I do know this group's in the room. We'll start with Cartwheel and ask Cartwheel to come up for their presentation. I believe that we've got enough seats for everybody right here at the podium. If y'all would come up, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and give us your title. with Cartwheel, and then we'll turn the mic over to you. I believe we can do it from the table. I think all three of y'all could do it from the table. Oh, we've got to run the computer. Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. And we can let him run it from right there. Okay.
I'll switch it up in PreK.
Well, let's begin then. I believe we got your mic on right there. And if you would give us your name, title, and then we'll turn the mic over to you.
Gotcha.
Now,
Good morning.
there you go.
Now, is it on?
Yes,
I can't
ma'am.
tell the difference, so
You
thank you
got
very
it.
much. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Irwin, and members of the committee who are here and joining online. And thank you for the opportunity to have us testify today. My name is Dr. Juliana Chen. I am a Georgia licensed child and adolescent psychiatrist with over 15 years supporting students and families. I am the Chief Medical Officer at Cartwheel Care. We are a virtual mental health provider that partners with school districts nationally to provide rapid access to mental health support for students, families, and school staff. And very briefly, throughout my career, I've always been focused on school, community, family partnerships to explore ways that we can expand access to quality mental health care and resources nationally, and helping students to stay healthy, learning, and engaged in the classroom. And I appreciate everyone's interest and time today.
Thank you, Dr. Chen.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jillian Kelton. I am the Director of District Engagement at Cartwheel. I spent more than 20 years in public education with the Boston Public Schools. I am located up in Massachusetts. Most recently, I served as the Chief of Student Support for the district, where I oversaw district-wide systems to help and reduce chronic absenteeism and strengthen our student supports. I began my career as a school counselor. I then moved in to be a building administrator. And as a mother of two school-age children myself, I have seen how vital it is for families and schools to truly work together. In my current role, I work with districts across the country. I just got here last night coming from Las Vegas, not for fun purposes, but to meet with the superintendent of Clark County. And I work with districts, including districts here in Georgia, to build coordinated, culturally responsive systems to meet the needs of students academically and social emotionally. Dr. Chen and I are very, very grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you all and share what we've learned from other districts across the country.
Great. Well, welcome. And from the South, we'll say we love your accent. We hear that a little bit when we head up to Boston, by the way. So what we'll do is we'll turn it over to you. I believe we've got your presentation up on the screen, members, right there. And Dr. Chen, if it's you, we'll turn it over to you.
Yes, I'll start, and then Jillian will take over, but we're both here to provide information and answer any questions that the committee has. Our goal over the next 15 minutes is to connect the dots, so to speak, between youth mental health and school attendance, and to share how school community partnerships, including virtual care models across all grade levels, can help to close gaps and strengthen Georgia's incredible efforts to date to help more students stay in school and thrive. So Georgia, as you all know, has made incredible investments in education innovation. All of those efforts, however, depend on one thing, perhaps stating the obvious, but it depends on students being in the classroom. Across school districts, leaders across the country are telling us the same thing, that new programs, new resources can only make a difference if students are present in school, in the classroom, to benefit from them. So attendance is truly, as you all know, and I think the reason why this committee exists, attendance is really the foundation for everything else. When students miss school, whether because of anxiety, family stress, community stress, mental health issues, whatever barriers, even the best programs, resources, initiatives can't succeed because it can't reach the students. As one district leader we work with recently shared, we can invest all we want in new textbooks, professional development, facilities. It will fall flat if our neediest students don't come to school or struggle to sit through class. So the scope, as we all know, and as everyone in this room knows, is significant. Roughly 1 in 5 Georgia students is chronically absent This equals over 360,000 children across the state. These rates are generally higher in urban areas and in rural counties, and low-income students are disproportionately affected. So much higher rates and then significantly greater learning gaps. We know that neighboring states show improvement is possible in attendance and school attendance when it's a statewide priority. And so the key point, as you all know, is that absenteeism is more than a measure of academics. It reflects significant barriers in students' lives and is directly related to mental health. And we can reduce those barriers and provide the support that students and families need to make meaningful improvements in attendance. So I've already mentioned, as you all know, that research, evidence, clinicians, there's lots of evidence to back this up, that mental health has become one of the primary drivers of student absenteeism. This is true in Georgia as well as across the country. So students struggling with mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, other behavioral challenges or emotional challenges, on average, these students miss far more school days than their peers. And anxiety in particular, and this is a broad umbrella term, I admit, but anxiety in particular is now the most common reason behind school avoidance. When these issues, just like medical issues, when these issues are not addressed early, they naturally are going to expand and grow and generalize. So a few school days can turn into many school days, into many weeks or months of missed school, missed learning, bigger behavioral emotional challenges, and so on, with greater risk of dropping out and all the other negative consequences that we see. The encouraging news here is that the reverse is also true. So when we identify and treat root causes, attendance can improve and students can stay in school. And to make real progress, schools and families need timely access to quality care, both in school and outside of school. And this ideally something that works best with both strong family involvement and coordination with the school team. So I know that the plan was, hopefully still remains, that we'll hear from Mr. Lowe on the importance of school-based social workers, the importance of investing in school-based team. This is definitely true. We want to echo that schools are already doing so much to support students. School-based social workers and school-based teams are critical. They generally know the families the best. They can notice early warning signs within the classroom building, within the classrooms themselves. They can respond really quickly when a student begins to struggle. And at the same time, the need has grown faster than the system can keep up, which I know this committee knows. So there are various reasons behind this. Staffing shortages, especially in rural areas, makes meeting students' needs close to impossible, or every student needs, I should say. There are huge needs and limited coverage. It's also impossible to reach students if they're struggling after school, weekends, and this is often when challenges are first surfacing. Most school-based staff are also excellent at what they do, but they are focused on educational challenges. They are not necessarily trained to manage more specialized clinical needs or mental health needs, or to treat more significant mental health issues. And so families obviously then are struggling to then connect with providers who actually can address the challenges that their children are facing. We also know families can understandably be cautious about privacy concerns, and so want to be able to build systems that can address all of those needs and all of those concerns. This is why, even with extraordinary effort, time, and resources, we know that most schools cannot meet every need on their own. And this is where virtual partnerships we have found can be incredibly helpful, but expand capacity to supplement and integrate within existing community resources and give schools and families more coordinated options for quality support.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about Cartwheel's school community partnership model. Schools can't and really shouldn't have to do this all on their own. Across the country, we are seeing how school community partnerships can help address the root causes of school avoidance. The formula is combining schools' trusted relationships with families and accessible high-quality care. At Cartwheel, we serve as one example of how this model can work in practice. Today, more than 325 districts and statewide partners use this approach to expand access for all students. When schools and families are supported together, 92% of students show improvement in their mental health. And schools report a 44% decline in absenteeism among students who receive care. And it's that chronic absenteeism that really is what schools are evaluated on. So we need to make sure that we're translating those clinical outcomes into academic outcomes as well, because schools are not evaluated on lowering depression and anxiety in and of itself, but we need to go one step further to say how this is impacting schools' chronic attendance problems if they have those. These results show what's possible when schools and families, community partners work as one team. Together, we are removing barriers to care, improving attendance, behavior, and academic outcomes. One of the major pieces here is creating more opportunities for positive parent engagement. This work can not only involve schools, students, and community. Parent involvement is a must. Our school avoidance program, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. School avoidance is one of the hardest attendance challenges that schools face. When anxiety or emotional distress keep a student from walking through the door, traditional approaches don't work. These students need a different playbook, one that often combines skill building, family coaching, and school coordination. Through our partnerships with districts and in collaboration with the Arizona Department of Education, we designed a school avoidance program specifically to address this issue. Students receive weekly one-to-one therapy with a licensed clinician trained in school avoidance, and parents get individualized guidance to help them reinforce progress at home. Psychiatric evaluation is available when needed, and care is offered from early morning through evening, weekend hours, during vacations in the summer, so that families can participate without missing work or school time. The goal is to address the real reasons that students are missing school and to work hand in hand with caregivers and school teams to make sure that a student's return to class is skill-based and sustainable. Again, parent involvement is a key factor in the success of these programs. The school avoidance program is now available to all districts in the state of Georgia who partner with Cartwheel. Using technology gives us the ability to make access to care faster for families and easier for schools. When a student needs help, families can be connected with care in days instead of weeks or months, and school staff don't have to manage all of the logistics that are involved. The same system automatically and securely tracks engagement and outcomes, giving districts, the Department of Education, and the legislature a clear view of what is impacting schools across different regions. That transparency means that leaders can see what's working, measure their return on investment to ensure that it's doing what they want it to do, and make data-driven decisions, all without adding to the current workload of educators and administrators, because we know that they're at capacity right now. Something to note also is that all this data sharing complies fully with FERPA and HIPAA standards, so schools and families can trust that information is being handled safely and appropriately. In short, technology helps everyone stay connected, families, schools, and the state, while keeping focus where it belongs, on students and results. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about just a brief case example. We've anonymized the data and the student's identity. And this is a brief example of how partnership comes to light. Tony, a 10th grader who recently moved in from out of state, missed 25 days of school. He's experiencing significant anxiety, mood changes, and has started using alcohol to cope. After obtaining consent from Tony's mom, Tony's counselor places a referral to Cartwheel. And within a week, Tony and his mother complete a virtual intake with a licensed Cartwheel therapist, and Tony begins weekly therapy. A few weeks in, at mom's request, Tony meets with a child psychiatrist for a medication evaluation. And mom begins regular parent guidance sessions to help her learn new parenting and communication strategies that she can use with Tony. 4 months later, Tony is attending school again regularly, using the coping strategies that he practiced with his therapist and re-engaging in class. The takeaway, this isn't just one student's story. It's that when schools, families, and providers all work together, we can change a student's trajectory in a single semester. A little bit about the outcomes. The results are very clear. Among students who received support through our school-based telehealth partnership, chronic absenteeism dropped by 44%. On average, those students missed 62% fewer days of school, showing that the impact isn't just district-wide, it's individual and it's measurable. For Georgia, this demonstrates what's possible with when student support aligns with the systems that are already in place. Better attendance, stronger engagement, and more students learning every single day. One last data point to underscore the broader impact. In another district that we work with, students who engaged in coordinated telehealth services saw an 84% reduction in behavioral incidents. Fewer disruptions and suspensions are part of the same story. When students get the right support early, they can learn. So how does this all work? How does the funding work? To sustain these results, the funding model has to work for families and for districts. Insurance-only approaches often lead to long wait lists and limited collaboration time, while school-only approaches constrain local budgets. In Cartwheel's partnerships, we've seen that a braided funding model, combining insurance billing with district support, keeps care affordable for family and helps to offset 3/4 of the cost for schools and preserves the coordination time that makes the school home plan effective. Importantly, Medicaid families have zero copays, and financial aid funds ensure that every student can have access to this program if they need it. This approach shows that sustainability is possible, and that with the right support, districts can continue delivering high-quality, equitable services year after year without overextending local budgets. With Georgia's investment in these services, funds are available for every public Georgia middle and high school right now.
A few final key points. Mental health, as we all know, is a key lever for school attendance. When we address anxiety and school avoidance early, and it's critical that we address it early, students can get back to class and get back to learning. Strong school community partnerships extend, not there to replace school staff, and they can reduce meaningful barriers like transportation, scheduling, can help provide specialized care and care coordination to complement the school-based teams. Parents, as Jillian mentioned, have to be actively engaged and supported throughout. This helps to multiply the impact and benefit. And sustainable funding is essential, and if done right, can keep services equitable and effective with lasting outcomes. We're here to urge the committee to continue to expand the $20,000 per school investment in direct mental health services to include elementary schools. Again, the early intervention is key, and this is where we can help prevent and minimize impacts from non-attendance, reducing costly escalations down the road, and keeping children, again, present, engaged, and learning. And to close, but I know that we can take questions as well. We're so grateful for the committee's time and thoughtful attention to this very critical issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the members of the committee who are here and joining online for all of your leadership and also for giving us this opportunity to testify. Georgia's focus on student attendance and well-being is truly inspiring, and we appreciate your commitment to ensuring every child across the state is present and supported in school.
Good presentation, good data, but please stay seated. Let us ask you a few questions. I've already got some. But I want to begin, if I can, with, I noticed in your presentation, you talked about school avoidance instead of just talking about their attendance at school. Is that the mental health piece that y'all use the word school avoidance that's kind of tied in there rather than just the word attendance?
I can start, and perhaps Jillian, you can add on, because we speak from different lenses, so to speak, given my background as a child and adolescent psychiatrist and Jillian's background on the school side. Students can miss school and attendance, right? Miss a day or two of school, and that isn't necessarily school avoidance. They're sick that day. Maybe there's some difficulty at home. Missing a school day doesn't mean that they're avoiding school. The term school avoidance is definitely something that as a clinician we use, and I believe schools use it as well, to try to demonstrate when a school attendance problem is related to a child or family avoiding school, which is a little bit different when there's been illness or some other barrier, if that makes sense. So an illness is temporary and is less of a concern. But if a child is avoiding school, anxiety, behavior, mental health issue, you really want to identify and jump in early. I don't know if that addresses the question. or
It
if you want
does.
to add
I
on.
just find it interesting. Terminology is important. We talk about dropout, and I think that's so negative. We talk about quitting school at a certain age. But getting that avoidance and attendance and understanding that maybe if you're sick, you're not really avoiding school. You're just trying to get better to come back and not affect anybody else with the flu. Where avoidance is you just have other issues other than being sick, and you don't want to be there.
And I think it should be pointed out that
Speak it up, please.
I think it can be pointed out that school avoidance doesn't necessarily mean that a student is chronically absent. School avoidance also means that the child might have a hard time just getting out of the car in the morning or leaving school early, going to the nurse often. So that's sort of the distinction. And then also, students who are chronically absent aren't necessarily school avoidant. They might be chronically absent because they're caring for younger siblings or because of transportation needs. So I think that's sort of where we're making the distinction between the two.
Well, thank you. I needed that education that you gave me there when I saw that terminology come up there. I'm going to try to address these questions by the order I saw them flashing. Number 22, is that you, Representative Townsend?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. First, appreciate your presentation. Enjoyed it. One of the things I think it's critical is some of the stuff I've done in the past. I think what you're doing is critical. You and other programs like yours across the state that's just being introduced to the school systems, I think will make a difference. I like your comment about the elementary schools kind of being left out. That is, if we can start them early, it's like reading, Mr. Chair. Literacy, if it doesn't happen in the early grades, it's not going to happen. And I think this is one of you can kind of say the same thing for mental health in this kind of sector. And then finally, yeah, I think we'll get more toward the end, but I think this is where you have to kind of decide and come up with a plan where we can give some districts flexibility and how some of the monies they can be spent and what areas. And that's something we'll just have to discuss. But I think the flexibility in this area too would be helpful for our schools and with either school avoidance or attendance. Yeah.
May I comment? I really appreciate that, your feedback and observation. I'll say, and this is not a Georgia specific thing. This is known across all populations that 50% of mental health symptoms begin before age 14. Meaning things start early, and this is definitely true with anxiety. And most people are not getting care for that till at least 11 years later when symptoms first present. So just this is to underscore the point that you've just made, that early identification and education and skill building is key, because you can save so many difficulties down the road of increasing problems, of not engaging, of low self-confidence, problems in the classroom, problems at home, problems in the community. So actually the elementary school age is the perfect age, not to pathologize, but to bring good education and support and to help schools and families and kids build the skills that they can learn to manage their anxiety, to stay in the classroom and help keep them on track. So just wanted to reinforce that the elementary age is actually, I think, in some ways, the most important time to be providing supports to kids and families to save problems down the road.
Thank you. Representative Wade, I believe, number 25.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to be here and ask some questions. I too am a father of 2 school-age children. And as many have heard in the room, my wife is a career educator. She's in her 25th year and she's administrator at a high school now, but she works with special needs students. I know there's a correlation too with some subsets of the special needs community that can create some of that as well, where absenteeism because of medical issues, doctor's appointments, traveling to and fro, even school start times sometimes are in IEPs, 504s, and that gets caught up in some of the absentee figures. And I've also heard from her that sometimes there's school avoidance, but those students are very technically present, but they are avoiding what's going on in the classroom. And even the seats that they are put in sometimes may not be the most conducive. So having people there that can identify that early is very helpful. What I'm very interested in are two things. One, the slide that you've got, I don't know if you can bring it up, has the state of Georgia and it has the color coded map. I know some of the blue areas that I'm assuming that is where you see a lower percentage of students that are absent, correct? Obviously, from a heat map, the orange is where you've got critical absenteeism. My thought is looking at some of these blue counties, they are not necessarily, some of them are affluent, but not all of them. Has your team determined that some of that has to do with Cartwheel or other providers being embedded in those school systems, or are there other, what are those school systems doing differently, especially in those school systems that are of our lower poverty level? Because that is a big reason for many students being out, but not the only. Do you have any feedback that you could provide, or if not at this time, at a future date? I'd love to see the difference between basically two school systems that have similar demographics, and yet one may be very blue from being lower absenteeism, and then one that might be orange. And what are the differences there?
I really appreciate that question. And as you all know, so Cartwheel is very new to Georgia because of your investment in supporting student and school attendance across the state. I'd like to believe that in a year, 2 years' time, when we've actually been here a little bit longer, that we can actually help turn the orange, pink states towards blue and look at the data, the exact data that you're wanting to look at it. But at this point, this predates Cartwheel's entry into the state. But the intention absolutely is to be able to shift schools in the direction where we bring that number down. And then other variables, county to county, I think we can kind of guess at the different reasons behind. I am sure one is likely to the extent that districts are mobilized around the issue, whether through a partnership or internally within a district. I think different districts have different understandings of school attendance and avoidance and likely manage it differently. But Jillian might be able to say a little bit more on that.
I don't know specifically what the difference is between the two districts, but I think it brings about an interesting idea of, we know that there are students who come from the same backgrounds, from the same set of circumstances, and they will excel and perform extremely well. And then their counterpart will not. And I have to imagine that there's something in there that speaks to that idea as well in these counties and these districts. And I wonder, I would really actually love to look at those districts who are blue, that are situated right next to an orange, to see what the differences are. Is there higher family engagement? What are they doing to have students come to school? What are their opportunities? Are they having resource fairs? How do what's the community like? Because I think that will give us an indication of being able to replicate what they're doing in other districts. Providing telehealth is an excellent option, but it's not just one silver bullet. It has to come from all different places, and we recognize that. So we're really looking to fit into the systems and structures that schools already have to help complement them. We're not looking to change things. We're looking to supplement, not supplant anything that's happening. But I'm actually going to look into that myself, and we can respond back to you on that.
Some of my observations, and this is anecdotal at this point, are some of those communities have made the decision locally to have nurses earlier, and that may be a difference where they may have similar demographics where those nurses are embedded, especially in elementary and middle schools, versus those that don't, or necessarily have more students per nurse or a lower ratio. The other piece is, I think, one of the things that I've heard, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on, the maximum, just having the dollars to spend doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be spent wisely. So my second question and last one is, break down that $20,000 investment. If it's being spent in the school, at a middle school, and we were to add elementaries, break down that $20,000. What is that allocating? What is that doing? How many students does that serve? And is there a match that needs to be happening locally? Just so I kind of understand. You threw up that number, 75% number. Is that 100% being replaced in your idea by the state, or is that a partnership between state and local? So just want to understand that funding ask. Thank you, Chairman.
I don't know if this gets to your I don't know if this addresses your question exactly, apologize, but the way we have the program in the state of Georgia is that we have unlimited referrals. So I don't have a specific student number because it all depends on the district. The district could send as many kids that they're concerned about our way, and we would work with those kids and families.
Right now, how it's $20,000.
Microphone. Sorry about that. Do you have any way to break down? I'm a math guy. I'm a banker. Forgive me. I'm just trying to figure out a $20,000 appropriation. It's allocated per school. You know, we kind of have this model where we've done it for school safety. We have a really good idea how schools have now taken those dollars and spread them for certain specific tasks, whether that be a percentage for staff, a percentage for technology, and a percentage for, you know, maybe improving the vestibule entrance to the school. How would that $20,000 be allocated? Is it literally just an estimate per student on the averages across the state, or is there specific dollars that this is going to?
You're asking the exact right question, and forgive me, this is where it's outside my area of expertise because I focus on the clinical model and care model, but we can get more specific kind of estimated numbers, breakdowns to show you kind of how that money is allocated, assuming various factors based on like other districts where we work. Because there's an unlimited model in Georgia, it's a little bit harder to probably estimate it in hard numbers, but happy to give you some estimates.
I'm assuming that number is based on the 360,000 students, right, across the Georgia. Is that okay? I'm getting some thumbs up. Can you provide any insight to the breakdown?
Thank you, Seth.
So, for the record, I'm Seth Rao. I'm our Director of Government Affairs here at Cartwheel. And what we do is that we will work with any district that comes into the system here so that we're looking at, so not all the students that we're seeing at Cartwheel are necessarily chronically absent. A majority of them probably are, but there might be students that are struggling with other things but are still coming to school on a regular basis. So in most other states that we work with a specific number of referrals, but here in Georgia, because you have some high schools that have 4,000 kids, you have some high schools that have 100 kids, and because of the way that you allocated the model, it's not as easy of a per student breakdown as it is elsewhere. So here that we've just decided to make our model to be an unlimited referral. So a school district, let's say that they have 2 middle schools and 1 high school. So they got $60,000 from the last budget for these services. That is, then they come in there, that we would make sure that we would treat any students that come their way with those funds. So it might be, my guess is in that type of case, it'd probably be like 75 to 100 kids that will be seen over the course of the year, and that we can see for their treatment. And then we can track their attendance rates, we can track their behavior rates, we can track their suspension rates, and we can see the reductions that Dr. Chen and Jillian showed you earlier in the presentation here.
Okay.
And so we've done that in other states, and hopefully we'll be able to come back to you in the months ahead showing, hey, as districts in Georgia are signing up for this, here are the Georgia specific results and how this is making progress on the goals that you have for this study committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, floor leader. And let's go, like I said, in order of the questions. Representative Glaze, this was not punishment having to go after floor leader Wade. It's just for when I say punishment being late, I was late trying to get here because of the traffic, so don't feel bad. But let me turn the microphone over to you for questions.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, my floor leader. Going after you is a hard act to follow, but thank you. Your presentation was very well, and it was. I made some notes, and I know a program in the college level that does this kind of work and how helpful it is for our students on the college level. I just had one question in your braided funding model. What happens if you have students who have no insurance? They're uninsured. How in this braided model would they obtain services?
We built Cartwheel very specifically to be able to support all students and families within a school district. So what that means is we support families with students pre-K through 12, and then we support kids with all insurances, including Medicaid, military plans, and uninsured. That's just built into each partnership that we have. We don't want insurance, geography, language, age, whatever it is, to be a barrier to receiving care. If there's a worry about a child, we want that child to be able to, and parents to be able to receive support. So with the braided funding model, it's built in like a financial aid fund, so to speak. So if a student is uninsured, they can still receive services. It's not a barrier.
So may I ask a little deeper into
Of
that?
course.
So you actually put the funding model together per school system so that you look at where there might be higher rates of uninsured? Would that mean that the funding model is more in those, the cost is higher in those areas versus another school system where we don't have kids who are uninsured at a high rate? Because there might be that.
Could you, would you have an answer to that? Because I think in Georgia, it's different.
Yeah, so
Georgia, it's different.
Yeah, so for our model here in Georgia at this point, since your actions here in the legislature allocated $20,000 per school, we are making it work on our back end to make sure that all students are going to be supported. So we recognize in some schools that there might be 100 kids and every single kid has either Medicaid or commercial insurance. There might be some high schools that are in your district that are much larger than that, where you have a higher percentage of uninsured students. It sort of balances each other out across the state, but we want to make sure that every school system, district, or charter that partners with us has access to the services so that we are not turning away any student who needs our services in the state of Georgia.
So I can safely say it's accessible and
Yeah,
affordable.
100%.
100%. Okay.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
we aren't adjusting or changing the model district to district based on uninsured percentage, for example, if that's what you're wondering. We would provide the same team and care regardless of the district and community for equity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We're going to go online to Vice Chair Rice. If you would be sure to cut your microphone on, and we'll let you ask your question, Vice Chair. Are you there?
Hi, thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can. You go ahead with your question.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much for this presentation. I apologize I was not able to be there in person today. And as we address the short-term and long-term outcome goals of our students, I just had particularly a question with the mobility of Cartwell. So I understand you to say that you take the insurance, you have various insurance, Medicaid, and I appreciate you elaborating on that. If a student moves from school to school within the district, what does that mobility of what Cartwell has done look like when they transfer to the other school, as far as the other school within that district being able to obtain the information? Or if they transfer district to district within our state that has Cartwell? And my final question is, if a student transfers to a school without it and they have a file, is there a way to obtain that information for that parent or social worker in the case if it's a foster child that's been moved from school to school? In the best interest of that child, would they be able to obtain that information to follow the child to the next school?
Thank you for that question. Because mobility rates are a very real thing in every state and in every district. And I want to be very clear that care follows the student. We do not stop care if a student moves to a different school or to a different district. And then one of the things I mentioned when I was speaking earlier on the slides is the technology piece. So the portal that we use will allow the new district to see how the student was doing, how many sessions they've attended, what the parent involvement has been like, so that there is a warm handoff between the old district and the new district. We want to really create transparency, and always doing that, keeping in mind being HIPAA and FERPA compliant and with the consent of the parent. So,
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, Chairman. Can I do one more question?
Oh, yes. You had two right then. I think they were going to your second one, but
Okay.
go
Yes.
ahead.
Well, and I guess one of the things that I wanted to make sure, if a student moves to a district that does not have Cartwell, and this is really on the interest of the student, if they are in progress and they have a setback because they're moving, is there a way that the parent or a file can be moved to the school just so they can observe where they were in that plan if the school unfortunately does not have Cartwell?
Yes, I was just going to add on to that. This is, we built this into Cartwheel's model from the very beginning. This is not a Georgia specific thing, but nationally, as Jillian mentioned, warm handoffs and continuity of care, these things are critical. Just like it takes a village to support a child, we don't want to support a child temporarily and then stop those services. So as Jillian mentioned, if a student moves to another district that is a part of Cartwheel, the care continues. If the student moves to a district, as you're asking, that is not a part of Cartwheel, that care also continues. If a student is 17, 18 and graduates high school and they're partway through working with a Cartwheel therapist, the care continues. The key is we do not want to disrupt the care. It's not contingent upon the partnership per se. So if a student in your example goes to a district that is not opted in to the Cartwheel partnership or has used this funding for other types of resources, that's fine. We'll continue working with the child and parent as long as they're wanting to continue to receive those services. And with parent consent, we would outreach to that new school to introduce ourselves, to say, hey, this is who we are. This is the care that we're providing. And again, with parent consent, we would then collaborate with that new school district to continue the care. The goal is to be able to support through the entirety of care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Rice, any other questions?
No, they answered those well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, great questions as always out of you. Seeing no other questions, thank y'all very much. We appreciate the information. As y'all are already been told, this is our last meeting as we're developing our recommendations from here, and valued your comment and being here. If you would, be sure to provide your information so that if we needed follow-up, we could. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chair and members of the committee, for your attention on this very, very important matter, and happy to answer questions in the future if they come up.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to Mr. Lowe, I believe. I saw him come in the door back there with the School Social Workers Association of Georgia. And there's already been discussion up here about you guys. So we're looking forward. You have a handout. Let us take a look at that. And if you would sit right up here. I believe we're going to do a media switch over so that we can get your PowerPoint up and running. So if we can, let's go ahead, and if you would introduce yourselves and your title for us, and then we're going to turn the microphone over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, committee. My name is Corey Lowe. I am the current president for the School Social Workers Association of Georgia, and I'm also a proud school social worker in Northwest Georgia in Walker County. And I have with me today my student intern from Dalton State College. This is Emma Welch. She is a bachelor's level intern with me in the school system.
Fantastic. Well, the microphone is yours then. We'll turn it over to you, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you. And you do have a copy of the one pager that is provided for those that are digital and online. The one that is online has links to the statistics that are provided. Unfortunately, I cannot provide that on paper. And I do thank you guys for being flexible with me today. As Mr. Chair said, the traffic was rough this morning. There was a wreck right down here. And then it took me 30 minutes to find a parking spot. And then I checked into the wrong building. So kudos to you guys for being able to battle this traffic every day. Mr. Chair, members of the committee that are present and online. Again, as I said, my name is Corey Lowe. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Georgia and the current president for the School Social Workers Association of Georgia. First and foremost, as we sit here today, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you on behalf of my colleagues in the social work profession for the work that each of you accomplished last year in helping us to secure funding for more school social workers around the state. This funding allowed Georgia counties that did not have a full-time school social worker to hire a school social worker. Because of this investment, countless students and families in the state will get the support that they need in communities that were long underserved. At SWAG, we are following up with this investment by proactively reaching out to those districts, offering to provide mentoring, technical support, and resources to the new school social workers so that they can succeed. We're also looking to work closely with the Georgia Department of Education to review data and ensure that these new positions are being used effectively and truly addressing every student's needs. While I'll talk more later about our role, I want to get into the discussion about what this committee is truly focusing on. As our friends with Cartwheel stated earlier, current data shows that across Georgia, 1 in 5 students is currently chronically absent, roughly 1 in 36,000 children. 360,000 children, excuse me. When a student misses school, it's more than just missing reading and math. They're missing connection, nutrition, safety, and consistency. We know that attendance is the first academic intervention. You can't teach a child who is not in the room. And chronic absenteeism affects us all. Students who miss more than 10% of the year in early grades are less likely to read on average on grade level by the time they're in the 3rd grade. By middle school, they're 30% less likely to be algebra ready. And by high school, they're 20% less likely to graduate on time and 44% less likely to go to college. This isn't just an academic issue, though. It's also a workforce issue. Analysts estimate that Georgia loses over $2 billion in future productivity every year because of chronic absenteeism. This is where we feel that school social workers can make a difference. We don't just count absences, we find the why behind them. It might be transportation, unstable housing, family stress, bullying, or even anxiety. And once we know their why, we can work to provide them with the how to help the student and the families overcome those barriers. We are all licensed professionals trained in mental health and case management. We are skilled at crisis intervention, family engagement, and resource coordination. We consider ourselves the link between home, school, and community. We are much more than attendance officers. We're the bridge that help kids show up, not because they are forced to, but because they want to. Let me share with you guys what that looks like on the ground. In Walker County in 2023, we launched an initiative called Making Sense of Attendance. We use early warning data to flag students at 5 unexcused absences, plan family visits with the social workers at 7. We conduct school refusal surveys and assess interventions when anxiety and trauma are suspected. Because of this, and in partnerships with other interventions, we have seen a decrease in chronic absenteeism, a 29% reduction in unexcused absences, and a 7-point increase in 3rd grade reading proficiency. That's not through punishment, it's through prevention, partnership, and provision. We do know, as was mentioned earlier, we are one of the orange counties in the very top corner, that what we are doing currently is not enough. I have been in conversation with our friends from Cartwheel to implement their services within our county, not just to address school avoidance, but to address school engagement. Similarly, our friends in Bibb County have made incredible progress with its Everyday Matters campaign. They've created real-time dashboards and attendance task force, and they've partnered with organizations like the United Way and local churches to mentor families. Their data suggests that they have seen a chronic absenteeism drop from 32% to 20% in just 3 years. And schools with a full-time school social worker saw attendance improvement by roughly 10 percentage points, and graduation rates rise from 78% to 84%. Those aren't just statistics. They are lives that have changed. It shows that when they have someone who cares, students will show up. In light of the current SNAP crisis, we also have a powerful opportunity to speak up for the children and families who are struggling the most. When we talk about chronic absenteeism, we have to remember that children can't learn if they're hungry. They can't show up ready to learn when they're worried about where their next meal is going to come from. That's why our work matters so much right now. School social workers around the state have been proactive, partnering with local organizations, food banks, and community leaders to make sure that no child goes hungry. In Walker County, we started the 100 Bag Challenge at all of our schools. We have asked our school and community partners to fill bags with provisions for families in need. We partnered with Food City, Food Lion, and Walmart for reusable bags. And we have asked every one of our schools to fill 25 bags. Within 3 days, the majority of our schools were exceeding 25 bags to the point we were asking for more bags. We've had community partners bringing in bags by the hundreds for us to have for families. So we as social workers don't wait for a crisis to act. We step in early, we connect families to resources, and make sure our students have what they need to come to school and stay in school. But it's not just about attendance. It's about advocacy. It's about standing up for children who rely on SNAP and saying clearly that food is not a privilege. It's a basic resource needed for success. When we meet those needs, we see brighter faces, school attendance improves, and we see better learning. That's the connection that we as a committee and group cannot afford to ignore. So how do we move forward in addressing this statewide? I think that first, it's important for all of us to understand how school social workers and counselors and psychologists differ. School counselors focus primarily on academic planning and career readiness, while psychologists specialize in assessment and special education evaluation. We as school social workers bridge the gap between home, school, and community. We focus on mental well-being, family systems, crisis intervention, and attendance barriers. When all three professions work together, the results are powerful. While we have moved closer to meeting suggested ratios, there simply aren't enough of us for every child to be reached with the kind of support that they need. The state of Georgia currently averages one school social worker for every 1,100 students. The national recommended average is one school social worker for every 250 students. For our state, that's a fourfold gap. Now, metro areas are closer to 1 in 900, but rural areas like mine are closer to 1 in 1,700. When one school social worker serves 1,100 students, the focus is largely reactive. They look for the next crisis, waiting for the next emergency. But when we're closer to the 1 in 250, we can shift to a proactive, prevention-oriented approach. Studies suggest that if we move closer to this ratio, chronic absenteeism could drop 20 to 30%, which means hundreds of thousands of additional instructional hours for our students. Behavioral referrals could increase by or decrease by as much as 25%, and higher graduation rates could be achieved. The Georgia Department of Education projects that a 5-point increase could happen statewide. And studies show that for every $1 invested in school-based social work yields a $7 long-term economic return. We're not asking for full funding to achieve a 1 in 250 ratio all at once. I know that that would be naive and a big lift. We're asking for a targeted approach. Start with the counties that have the highest chronic absenteeism rate. I know was asked earlier the correlation between Cartwheel and mental health services and the colored counties. I do believe that if we also looked at the data, the schools and counties that are more orange probably have a lower school climate rating. And I think that a lot of absenteeism is mirrored with low climate rating. So I think if we were able to look at a tiered approach towards those, then we can see measurable improvement and expand that statewide as success grows. So in order to make this a reality, we also have to be able to attract seasoned social workers. Many of us hold advanced clinical licensure as LCSWs. This is the same licensure that is recognized in healthcare and mental health systems. What we would like to see is Georgia to acknowledge and supplement those professionals similar to how other specialist degrees are acknowledged. I believe that this would help us to retain seasoned professionals and attract more experienced clinicians into our schools, especially in rural and high-need areas. We would see this as a strategic investment in quality, not just quantity. And I know that this sometimes is a taboo topic, but I do believe that looking forward, we would also like to see social workers funded directly under QBE, just like other student support professionals. Again, that is a long-term goal. It's definitely not an immediate ask. For now, our focus is on practical steps, such as strengthening staffing, targeting high-need districts, and supporting those that are already doing the work. I feel that working towards these high-return bipartisan areas, we all can achieve our goal. At the end of the day, chronic absenteeism isn't just an education issue, it's a community issue. Every day a student misses, they lose a piece of opportunity. and so do we. When students miss, they miss the opportunity for safety, stability, and connection. If we want to strengthen Georgia's future, reduce its youth mental health crisis, and keep students engaged in school, then we must invest in the people that can do the work on that scale. If we want to continue to see chronic absenteeism decline, much like the 50% decrease that Georgia has committed to over the next 5 years, then we have to, then we have to remove those barriers, bridge those gaps, and create conditions for students to show up, not out of obligation, but out of hope. Thank you again for your support. In starting this journey, I ask that we work to build on it. Let's build on the progress that was made last year. Let's move closer to that 1 to 250 ratio by starting with our most impacted communities and continue to ensure that every child in Georgia, no matter their zip code, has the opportunity to show up, learn, and thrive. If we as a state truly desire to end chronic absenteeism, then we as a state need to make the investment. I want to thank you for your time, your leadership, and your unwavering commitment to Georgia students, families, and future. The work has just begun. We are setting the table for future generations. Just as the table must be carefully prepared for a meaningful meal, we are laying the groundwork for Georgia's future, where every student has the opportunity to be nourished with opportunity and hope. As Henry Ford once said, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. Setting the table in Georgia is only the beginning. What we build together will define our success. So I ask you, will you please join us at the table? I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, Mr. Lowe. Thank you for your presentation. Let me begin. And by the way, I believe everyone has a question for you. So
Good.
you piqued some interest here. Let me start out with the word swag. I do like that terminology for you guys. That's not what I was associating swag with y'all. So good job there. School climate.
Yes, sir.
Would probably like to entertain future conversations with you on that and the effect that your association sees with school climate.
Yes, sir.
We're very aware of a lot of data about school climate and how it affects all parts of school, which I am sure it is attendance too. Do y'all do any type of look at that with school climate at all?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. We actually utilize the school climate survey to gather data over previous years, and we have put that together in a presentation over the last probably 5 years, and we present that to our administrators on how each school is doing based on the school climate survey. We also understand that sometimes things are inaccurate, just because we don't have all students who are filling that out. We don't have all staff who are filling it out, but we try to utilize that to build a culture of engagement within our community. We have really built our community up. And I've been with Walker County Schools for 9 years. This is my first full year as lead. And we are privileged to now be at 5 school social workers. When I started, we were at 3. And prior to that, they were at 2. And we have 15 schools. And I myself, I cover 4 schools. I'm also the homeless liaison and the foster care liaison for our county, which means I also have all homeless students and all foster care students. So I spend a lot of time in court with our partners at Family and Children's Services, not because I'm required to, but because I want to go ahead and start bridging that gap with them, because what we see in our area is a lot of transiency. We border so close to Tennessee. We have students who jump the line consistently into Chattanooga, but we also have a lot of group homes. And so a lot of our rates with absences are because of the transiency with our foster students. And so we want to make them feel like they are immediately part of our culture. And I think that in regards to, again, with school climate, we utilize that to build what we want to be. my goal is to hopefully one day be to hopefully one day people to look at Walker County and say that this is the model of what we want to follow.
Gotcha. But let me just do one follow-up, and then I'll start with the members' questions. If we worked on the ratio, let's begin with rural counties. Can we find the licensed individuals out there to work?
I think so. In this profession, it's not, for a lot of us, it's not a financial reason why we do this. A lot of us do it because we have our own trauma. 3 years ago, I stood in the rotunda across the way and talked about the upbringing that I had. My dad was drug addicted, my mother as well. And I came home from school every day wondering when the next time my dad was going to beat me. I've been put through a window. I spent a lot of time scared that I was just not going to make it. And I didn't have a lot of support. I finally got out when I turned 18, and then I had a little brother who was born. And I used to watch my dad do the same thing to my brother. It took me stepping up and taking custody of my brother. My dad beat him so bad that my dad went to jail because my brother was bleeding from his back, all because he was 5 minutes late for curfew. I say that not to say that I don't love my dad, because I do. My dad died in 2022. Substance abuse will do that to you. But I wish I would have had somebody to check on me when I was a kid. And so I don't do it for financial gain. If I did, I would be in an entirely different profession. I'm married a social worker. My wife is a clinical director for mental health and substance abuse rehabilitation. And we do it because we want to. Because there may be 100 children that I interact with, and 99 of them may not remember who I am. But if I change the life for one kid, then it doesn't matter how much I make, because it's worth it. And so, to answer your question, I do think that we can find the clinicians to be involved. I know that there was some hiccups a few years ago with Medicaid billing with school nurses, but the state already allows us to bill services, therapeutic services for LCSWs under Medicaid, as long as it's written into students' IEP. Other states also allow to do so through licensed master social workers, so the ones who haven't gone through the 3 years of clinical supervision and testing. So after I finished my master's program, I got my LMSW. I did 3 years of supervision under an LCSW and 3,000 clinical hours in order to just qualify to test to get my LCSW. So as a licensed clinician, I can practice in the state. And so I can also supervise LMSWs and MSWs for therapeutic services. Other states allow for the billing for Medicaid under LMSWs. Currently, we don't in the state of Georgia. But I think there's also a pathway not only to have that be under Medicaid billing, but there's a pathway to have that available for all students. It would take some work, but I think long-term it could be sustainable for us to be able to do so, as long as we have the support to be able to build it, which is also why I talk about the tiered approach, because realistically, there's no way financially as a state we could just immediately hit that 1 in 250 ratio. There's not enough of us right now. But long term, if we're talking five-year plan, 5-year strategic plan, I think with the work we could get it done.
Good.
And we're willing to do so at SWAG, right? Which is, again, that is we got lucky with the GA. And so at SWAG, we're dedicated to increasing and improving our profession.
Good. I'm going to start with the questions then. Thank you for those answers. We're going to floor leader Wade, I believe it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate your sincerity. So we all have our why, and I think you can be an encourager for those folks that are going through what you did, and you can be an example of what you can still do in spite of the challenges that we all face them, right? It's different for everybody, but appreciate your story. I'm sympathetic, had a friend like went through what you did. So brought back some memories for my buddy. So, and he's doing phenomenal now too. So, my question is this, kind of back to this, and I don't know if your organization has, or if DOE or GOSA has this. I'm very curious, to this fact. I do want the state to be a partner in the plan to reduce that ratio. So I agree with that, as the same with the nurses. As a former school board member, I remember our community, we came together and we made the decision locally to allocate local dollars to make sure every single school had a social worker and had a nurse. That was and we in Georgia respect home rule and local control and the desire to kind of chart your own path and then have the state come in and support when they can. So I'm really curious to know if there's a correlation with the blue counties on here on your sheet, and if we can know what the ratio is, student to school social worker is in those counties. And I am curious to know the same for the nursing piece, because I think that having the desire to get to that 1 to 250 is extremely impactful. 1 in 1,700 in Walker County it's staggering, and it makes sense because you can't be all things to all students all the time.
Let me jump in there, floor leader. I see Matt in the room from DOE. Matt, if you don't mind, could that be something that we could pull off this state of Georgia chart, that you could produce that information of social workers in those counties?
It's on CPI, the certified index, personnel index we get. We know how many are in high school district. We have to then overlay it on
Let's have an offline conversation, and maybe we can get you that data, floor leader.
Thank you. And I think it would just support the effort, right? If we're seeing that locally they're funding them and these orange communities, for whatever reason, aren't, then that could justify what you were saying, the tiered approach. Then we've got data to support that. I know our speaker and our chairman, we want facts and data, not just the emotional feeling that I know the call is there, I know the need is there. Let's figure out a way that we can have good specific data to guide and direct an increased funding to reduce that ratio. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chair, may I? In that regard, we are fortunate in the state to have a school social work liaison that works with the Georgia Department of Education, Dr. Lindsay Oliver. And about 3 years ago, we instituted a school social work dashboard that is part of the Godot website. Every year, school social workers across the state report every single interaction in a multitude of categories that we have with families, whether it be working with special education students, with students with financial hardships, making DFACS reports, whether it be going to court. And those are all compiled onto one website. You can see the entirety of the state, and you can also go county by county and see all of what every social worker in the county is doing. And while it's the data is good, it's still going to take us another year or two to really kind of get it all where we want it as a state. There was some hiccups as it went through. People report things different ways. They view things through different lenses. We now have guidance on what everything would classify as, and so we are able to pull that up and see that data, what everyone is doing across the state, and see the need. In regards to how we're working on attendance as well, I again am very fortunate. And I know when she sees the recording of this, she's gonna get on to me for bringing her up by name. But I have a school social worker in my county named Christine, and to say anybody is data driven, like she would be the poster child for data. In fact, the one pager that you guys have, I sent her the statistics and was like, "Can you please throw this together for me?" Because she loves Canva and she loves data. She is research driven. And I know that within my role at SWAG, though my elected term technically ends in April, that doesn't mean that the work stops. And I know that if the committee requests data, then I also sit on the advisory committee with Dr. Oliver for this very committee. We will get you the data. And it will take us some time, but if that is what it takes, then we will get you the data.
For that, and thank you, floor leader, and somebody who helps fund social workers. Let's go to Chairman Dubnik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Mr. Lowe, thanks so much for being here. I took over my role from an appropriation standpoint 2023, and one of the first groups that came to speak to me was I guess you would call it a coalition of school nutrition folks and social workers and mental health clinicians. And I do not make my next comment at all to disagree with what you said a minute ago. I simply would like to dig a little deeper if I could. The conversation at the time was that hungry children don't learn as well, and we have those who are, I'll use a phrase, chronically underfed. We heard from our mental health clinicians that we have those who are chronically facing mental health challenges that are going unaddressed, either I would say outside of the home, meaning they're not being taken care of by parents, by the family, and they're simply at school to try to address those. And the social workers then explained to me, and Reed and I grew up, and this was the comment that was given, there was one school counselor, and that counselor was there in our schools to help with everything from what are you going to do after high school to you're experiencing common teenage life to mom and dad are going through a divorce at home, and they were all of those things in one. And they did it well and they did it effectively. However, today that job has become, their words, 3 jobs. And the impact they had on me was, and this is where I'm not disagreeing, I'm just digging deeper. If we spent $1 billion today, if we had another $1 billion, we could not manufacture enough folks to fill each of those 3 needs from a social worker, and I'm kind of lumping mental health in together because I think at the time it was lumped in together, not saying it's any differently today. Mm-hmm. So not telling you I've got an extra $1 billion laying around in my budget or anything. Yeah. For anybody who was taking notes, Andrew, I know you're listening and watching. That's not what I said, nor Christine. But what would be our first step if you were in our shoes, if you were an appropriator, knowing, let's just be honest, there are confines to the budget and to dollars. I hear we're at, 1 to 800. We want to go to 250. It's less and lower in those rural and underserved areas. But what would be your advice to us as appropriators of where we could start prospectively to recruit folks inside your profession to come and help make a difference?
For your question, in Walker County, we classify our school counselors, our social workers, and our nurses all under one banner. We are all the Department of Student Services. We are all one connected piece. none of us could do our job without each other. And I see that as a building block, which is why I say I don't want to look at lowering the ratio necessarily just for school social workers. I see the need for everybody in the building at one time. Currently, all of our elementary schools have one counselor. All of our middle schools are at 2, and all of our high schools are at 4. I have 2 social workers in our county that are based in 2 separate schools. They're 2 of our higher need schools each. One has a middle high, one has 2 elementary schools, and they're able to become a part of that team and interact with those students and build relationships with those families outside of only when there's a need. Christine and Ashley, who both work in these buildings, they know a lot of their kids by name because they see their kids on a daily basis. The only kids that I could tell you by name are the ones that I am unfortunately involved with a multitude of times, because that's the only time that I get a chance to see them. And I feel like as a system that does our students a disservice, because there's such a negative connotation on what a social worker is. Immediately people hear social worker and they immediately start thinking of family and children's services, and I support them wholeheartedly. I used to work there, so I know what they have troubles with. And so there's that connotation of negativity, which is why we brand ourselves as the Department of Student Services, because we are there for the student, to serve the student. And so when it comes to appropriations, I think we look at everything twofold, and we look at it from a standpoint of, based on the data, can we appropriate funds to start maybe one in each? Do we split that together because we have to work together? My school counselors and I, we talk all the time because we work the same stuff. While they're in the building and they're doing classroom guidance lessons and they are providing one-on-one connections, when it comes to resources or mental health or community outreach, they call me and we talk all the time. And so I view us as one system. And I think in order for us to grow as a state, we have to see it as one system. And again, not to harp on QBE, they are also funded under QBE as while we are not funded under QBE. And so the counties don't have to hire a school social worker. And I think because of that connotation of negativity, they don't necessarily see how we can progress as an organization, how we can grow as a profession. But I think to lump us all together and see that it's not school counselors, it's not necessarily just social workers who are making difference. It is a team collective, and it has to be a team collective, because if it's not, then we as professionals are failing. Does that, I hope that answers your question. I know it was kind of a roundabout way to get there. But I know that we just see ourselves as one entity as opposed to a multitude of entities.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, very brief follow-up.
Yes, please.
I was making notes here, and you mentioned something about acknowledging degrees, and I wasn't ready for what you had said previously. Could you just expound on that brief? I know we're running out of time, Mr. Chairman, but could you just expound on that briefly and what you would be looking for the state to do when you talk about acknowledging degrees?
And let's be brief because
thank
we
you.
are close
Yes, sir.
on time.
So within the state, under the professional licensing for schools, there, as you know, there's a tiered pay scale, right? You have bachelor's level, master's level, specialist, doctorate. No matter what my degree is as a social worker, unless I go get a specialist in education or a doctorate in education, I can't progress. So there's no incentive for social workers in the state to move beyond just having a master's in social work, because it's not recognized by the state. There are programs that allow for school social work specialists through licensure, but because it's not recognized, whereas a school counselor can go get a specialist in school counseling and they move up that tier, whereas unless we go find a program, like we can't move up, even though we have to go through like this clinical licensure process. And like I said, it's not not everything is about financial gain. But I think if we want to attract and keep professionals, then that is something we have to look at, because ultimately what we see is the seasoned clinicians who can provide these services in the school. At some point, they're going to find an alternate route because we have to be able to support our families. And so it's.
Thank you, Chairman. In the order I believe they came up, Representative Glaze.
Thank you so much. This was probably one of the most heartfelt presentations during this committee. But from the heart to the head, what is most impactful that I'd like you to spend just a few more minutes on is this idea of prevention, partnership. And so if you would help me understand how you as a LCSW work in the prevention partnerships role. I know a little bit more about counselors than I do all of the work that you guys do. I see your need, and I really do see you having the smorgasbord of connecting into all of the barriers that really now have cost us $2 billion and more of loss in our economy because of this high absenteeism. But I want to be sure that I'm disconnecting counselors and then your work in the area of prevention and partnerships.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So with my LCSW, our scope of practice does not allow me to provide therapeutic services without it being in an IEP, and that's not something that we have really started in our county. It is something we have looked at. But just because I can't provide one-on-one therapeutic services doesn't mean I can't utilize the knowledge that I have from being a clinician outside of my purview within the school system. I have done, I've worked at a private clinic doing services in the past. And so I can utilize what I have learned to incorporate that into small groups with students to work a prevention plan with students and acknowledging the small gains that we make. If we have a student who misses 4 days a week because of things going on at home that are outside of our control, and we're working to eliminate those barriers. And Cartwell talked about the avoidance. What we want to do is when we combat the avoidance with engagement, when the students are coming to school, we want them to see us as an outlet for things that are going on. And we want to, if they then move on to coming 3 days a week, that's a small step towards being there every day. And we want to acknowledge that they are progressing. And when it comes to being preventative, we have to look at that and we have to start early. We can't wait for them to hit this chronic absenteeism mark before we start working with kids. We have to start early identification, because if we don't, then once they've reached the rate of chronic absenteeism, all we're doing is just putting a Band-Aid over something that we could have worked to hopefully prevent. Now, we're not going to prevent all chronic absenteeism. There's a lot of things. That doesn't mean that we aren't going to try, but we have to have these early identification things and work with other partners to put things into place and build build a community of school not just being school, but school being part of the community and getting out in the community and building those relationships with families and helping them to meet their basic needs. Because if we can meet those basic needs, then when they get into the building, that's what they can focus on is working towards mastery of education.
Thank you, Representative. And Representative Townsend, I believe you are next with 22.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. First, I'm sorry to hear about what happened last week with your middle school students with the kratom situation, and that's not good.
That's my school that I cover. So I spent 5 hours in the hospital with the kids working, connecting families, and checking those, just making sure those kids were okay. I want to be the first face that the parents saw when they got there, because they need to have that connectedness. And unfortunately, we also had the bus crash at the beginning of the year. That was also my school. So that day I spent 9 hours at the hospital connecting families with resources. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And from what I remember in my educational career, I started working as social workers in 2007 as a principal, then later on CEO, then superintendent, and they've all been top notch, and we appreciate Swag and the rest of y'all. You kind of went into it already. You talked about the number of schools you had, number of students, and how you had them. One of those things I was looking at is, can you pinpoint what your hotspots are, and then prioritize social worker for those either 2 or 3 elementary schools, 4 elementary schools, or whatever, for those high attendance needed schools areas to concentrate on, where that's their focus, instead of other areas, that's their focus. But it sounds like you kind of do that already. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. And we do try to do so. I know that ultimately when we start looking at the data, I mentioned our 2 school social workers are splitting 2 schools each, which is far lower than they're closer to about 1 in 900.
Yeah.
As opposed to the rest of us. And this is the first year we've had that as an opportunity. And so I'm interested at the end of the year to see how that data correlates.
No, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so by being in the building and having that lower ratio, they're able to have that focus and be able to be on the front lines of battling the chronic absenteeism. Whereas while I do focus on absenteeism in the whole, like with our county truancy and now with the Senate Bill 123 and focusing on our growth towards chronic absenteeism, sometimes admittedly it is missed, because we do focus so much on the next emergent issue. I can focus on chronic absenteeism, but then we have issues like where we have kids who end up in the hospital, or I have kids whose houses burned down, or with high rent rates. I have families every week who are needing to find shelter because they can no longer afford a place to live. And so we're trying to I have to prioritize that, because that will become a barrier towards absenteeism if we don't focus on that eventually.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. The other question's been answered, Mr. Chair, so I can stop there.
Thank you, Representative. And that concludes your questions, Mr. Lowe. From what I see from everybody, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for what you do for your students and teachers, as well as what you do for your whole community there. It's rather obvious that you do quite a good job, and they're very lucky to have you. So your intern that is with you, welcome. Thank you for being here too, and being a part and witnessing this.
Just glad that you guys didn't ask her a question.
Well, watch out. You're not out of the seat yet. So, but thank you for being here, and thank you for your time then. What I'd like to do at this point then, members, is we're going to spend just a few minutes at open discussion with you. What I'd like to do is kind of hear from you as we're preparing this information and seeing where we can assist. Give me what stood out to you. I want you to think about that in our 3 meetings that we've had, the discussions and all the presentations. You've done a very good job of turning in what I termed your homework, and we've compiled it and shared it with you. But with just the few minutes that are left here, do you want to have a comment about what stands out to you as we're ready to write this report? If you would just push your button, and by the order, I'll try to get you up. Floor Leader Wade.
Thank you, Chairman, and appreciate the work and the effort. 2 things, well, 3 things I'll say. One, the big takeaways for me are nurses in every school, just from this whole, especially elementary. I'd love to have the data to know what we talked about with DOE, trying to overlap those school systems and what are they doing differently, and are they utilizing local resources to fund, whether it's nurses, a lower ratio for school social workers or counselors or other types of clinicians, having kind of an understanding of, there's nothing new under the sun. And if there's a system that's getting it done, with less dollars, but they've got the right team and they've got the right framework, modeling that. I think the gentleman said he wanted to have his system be the model example. Well, let's see if that model is out there. And then the question that I have, and this is more based on incoming that I'm getting from constituent services back home in my district, is I don't know that we as a committee had the opportunity to, and don't know that the committee's directly correlated with this, but is there a function or a component within the court system, within the DFAC system, where because of its type of bureaucracy with its mission, is it stepping on some of the efforts, or is it creating an unintended barrier or a delay? And the delay is what I'm experiencing through a lot of constituent concerns with their dealing with DFACs and students that are in the foster system, or even students that are temporarily being held because of parents that have done things they shouldn't have done, which creates more direct work for like social workers that we're seeing here. And I think he even mentioned he had to spend a lot of time in courts. And I know of 2 constituents right now that they've been in court for over 2 years. And those students have had abysmal attendance, not because the child didn't want to be there. It's because they've been moved from a Covington district to Forsyth County, and now they're in Lumpkin County. And it's probably in the best interest of that child from a safety standpoint that that's what happened, but it didn't fit, right, the system that we have, so that maybe they were having cartwheel in one location, and now who knows what services that child is getting. And so there's a delayed reaction, and the court has a component in that. Not blaming them, it's just the way the system is. It's not really conducive to speak fluently and quickly with our school system. So, but outside of not having a real good understanding of that piece, I think the other information that has been provided, especially around, this $20,000 per school, getting into elementary schools and really trying to dig in on who's getting it right, I think that will help guide the decisions. And the last thing I'll do is I'll quote my wife. We had a conversation last night just about the committee work, and she helps me with my homework. And, she said, there's another component, and they in Lumpkin County schools, they have what they call Adulting Day, and they've now kind of taken that into Adulting Week. And making parents accountable again and giving them not just, because a lot of these kids and what she sees, she's over student services, is there's some parents that just, they hadn't figured out how to be an adult, let alone parent a kid. And that piece, and how do we get parents engaged so that they understand the importance of that child doesn't need to be the breadwinner that's leaving school at 11:05 to go work a job so that they can stay at home and not work. Those are some other components that we've got to dig into on the community connection side, that there is a real good role and responsibility that you become as a parent, and that is that you need to be the one that wants your child to go to school, right? You don't need to be the example of avoidance that creates that chronic, situation. So I think that there's some efforts that we can look at about parent accountability. And I'm not talking about a stick. I'm more interested in the carrot side of that. But there probably needs to be a conversation on the court side as it relates to the stick. Thank you.
Thank you. Saw a lot of head nodding, so we will go to, I believe, right after you was Chairman Dubnik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Going back, looking at my notes from previous times, Chairman Jones would hopefully smile when I say this. How much are we truly utilizing technology and telehealth to deliver? During COVID, Chairman Jones talked about, we were discussing AP classes, and he said, we've got all these AP students that want to learn, and we've got all these AP teachers, but they don't necessarily live in the same school district. And so why are we not filling unfilled seats of AP students to learn from an AP teacher using technology? And in that case, Zoom. So I ask in this case, how and what are we doing with technology and telehealth to deliver care? Secondly, one of the very first slides that we saw in our very first meeting, it showed the map, and then Mr. Cardoza was kind enough to say, hey, here's the interactive tool where you can dig down by demographic. And the one that's just kicked me hard was high school grades all have chronic absenteeism rates above 25%, with the 12th grade having a rate above 30%. I'd love to know more about that data and what we're seeing at the high school level that drives that. Lastly, my eyes were open this morning to the idea of I believe you said that 50% or more of our mental health challenges begin before age 14. And so the need, Mr. Chairman, to focus on elementary schools. I know that Speaker Burns and Miss Dale, thank you so much for being here today and for your constant love and attention to all things education. But I know when I sat in the speaker's office many times and we talked about how we could provide support, it was at all ages, in all zip codes, at all levels. And so my eyes have been open today prospectively for the need for that elementary addition as well. But I'll kind of echo Mr. Chairman Leader Wade's comment. I do believe when the family unit comes back together, positive outcomes will occur. And I know that we can't legislate that nor appropriate that, but if we can do our job to support those students and those families, I want to do my part and be a part of that. So thank you for the chance to be here. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Glaze, I believe you're up.
Wow. I'm so honored that you would allow me to sit with such great men and the work that you've done, Chairman, and the rest of us who get to sit here. I'm from the North, and my mother was mentally ill. There's 5 children, and we remained in that space from the age of 7 years old, and we were chronically poor. And so as I sit here, I am my heart is just pulled out every time. And I will say that I've heard a lot of good presentations, but where I want to say, I hope that we will land in some spaces with supports around parents. I hope that we'll land there. And that's through the work of counselors and our LCSWs in the school systems, but they already have what we know as a load that is beyond their capability. And so I do believe that we have a need to assist our students and our families in some way, providing more support. If we don't get that kind of support in the community, and I know we've got a budget that is limited, but the family breakdown is there. And we are not building it up the way that we're going right now. That has nothing to do with partisanship. It is just there. I think we do have some fail-safes that we must put in place to have future productivity with our young people who will be our leaders tomorrow. $20,000. It's not a whole lot. So it's there. But we've got to do what we've been asked and that is we've got to have some support around prevention and partnerships. I believe we've seen enough partners to come through this committee to say that there are partners that are there out in our communities all over Georgia, and some willing to go where there's not enough partners. And I believe we've heard over and over, targeted and focused attention is where the chronic absenteeism is. And we've got to start with that tiered approach. Someone say, well, that's just rural and what's going to happen to the folks in urban. Well, I'll tell you what, we need to start where it hurts most. And that's our rural counties that have the least and have been left out a little bit more. And so I'm willing to stand with that. Please, I think prevention and partnerships are what we've heard, that we've got to build upon those so that we have the mechanisms in our counties that need us the most, that there is a tiered approach, and that this over 5 years or so, where we can actually focus and target our support. And if it needs to go back to the QBE, that we make sure we put our social workers in that QBE, I am first and foremost to say, let's consider that strongly, because that's the only way we can support from the state level to make sure there's enough folks to help our students and our families. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Representative Glaze. Let's move on to Representative Townsend.
Thank you, Chairman Irwin. Just got a few notes, and a lot of it's going to be probably already said, but I think it's important to say it again or to say it a different way. I do believe the school nurses, especially in the elementary schools, are critical, along with the social workers. That's why I was pleased to hear, because one of the things I was thinking of, you have to think outside the box, especially in social work. And if we can prioritize those needs inside the schools and put those people in place where the hot spots are, kind of the old principal mentality where a hot spot is, make sure somebody's always there. I think that's going to help. I think the accountability is important. I agree with your wife 100%. And I think it's important to have the carrots and the sticks, because if you don't have a stick, I mean, as a principal, you kind of go down the list or superintendent and go, hey, this isn't important to the state. This isn't important accountability. This is important to really nobody. Then why are you doing it? So we got to make sure everybody realizes what we're doing is important. I think that's critical for this to be pulled off, what we're trying to do. Flexibility for systems to use some of that mental health funding for the programs like Cartwheel or other programs out there. There's more than just Cartwheel, but looks like they're doing a good job. But we've got to look at those. I know there's a lot of waivers out there, strategic waivers, charter waivers. Are we providing the flexibility we need for those school systems? That's why we work with our partners in GSSA and GSBA and those groups to make sure we're doing that. Encourage what Representative Glaze talked about with private partnerships. Communities and schools, other partners like that across Georgia are doing excellent work. Somehow, how do we encourage those school systems who are struggling to reach out to those partners? Because those partnerships, those private partnerships will not work unless they're all in. If that school is not all in, superintendent's not all in supporting them, like the program we have in Glenn County's communities and schools, the high school has given up a couple rooms for them, and they have the access to records, things like that, such as staff, everything's signed off, of course. But it takes that kind of commitment for them to be all in for that kind of program to work. If they're forced to do it, if they go, it's not going to work. So hopefully, I'm not sure how to get that message across, but really sing the praises of the ones that are doing well with that. I like what you said today. It's the first time I've heard about it, was the look at the cost to recognize specialist degrees if we're worried about workforce and social workers. If the workforce issue is critical, to me, that's a good carrot, and that's real work there. And then funding, Chairman, you know this better than I do, but at the end of the day, once we come up with our recommendations, we'll just have to pinpoint what's the priority, what's going to be key, and fund from top down and try to see what we can afford and go from there. It may be it's not going to be a 1-year plan, I'm sure, but we do have to kind of figure out what our top priority is, then attack the funding that way, and then go from there. And so, again, I appreciate serving this committee, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Representative. Let me close out then by stating, first of all, members, thank you for your passion, your attendance, your efforts, your communication. I will tell you that we gave you homework, and I haven't graded it to this moment, but you're getting an A+ on your homework. Yeah, every single one of you on this committee did fantastic with that. And then, of course, with your communication here at the meetings, presentations, I think, were very informative to us. And we obviously have an issue that we need to address. And I think we're out there addressing it, but I think there are some efforts to address it better and to get it to a situation that is more productive for our young people that are not attending school and having the issues they are. The communication will not stop. Just with this meeting today, we will be working on that report, and we will be communicating that with you. So stay tuned, as we're going to be prepared in the very near future to having that complete with your efforts and your guidance too. So as I say, it's not going to end today.
I've been trying to communicate through Shirley and others, well, mainly Shirley, and was told that it would be possible to speak to this committee as a member of the public. And I wonder if I could have a few minutes.
Okay. I'll tell you, we have 4. First of all, tell me who you are, sir.
This is the thing that would relate most to this. I got 100 things I'd like to say. For 3 years, I taught teachers how to teach cursive handwriting. My father was the author of the Palmer Method, and I wrote the 3rd grade teacher's edition instructions on what to do each day. I would like to be able to create a series of videos that would teach teachers how to teach cursive handwriting. I see kids writing.
Mr. King, let me state this. Yeah.
Even taught them how to hold a pencil.
Let me do this, Mr. King. Excuse me. This committee is for chronic absenteeism. It isn't for other parts of education.
A guy named Larry Veal has a program called Be More Positive that's going out in Gwinnett County for about 10 years. You probably get good information from either from the Gwinnett County school system or the Gwinnett County district attorney. But he takes kids that are really in serious trouble and spending 1 hour a week with them for 8 to 10 weeks, straightens them out. And kids who are on the verge of being thrown out of school are not thrown out of school. And he's been incredible. And I just wish that he could have been here, but he got plugged into this whole thing. It's called Be More Positive. He's got a whole curriculum. He's got a website. He's also a stand-up comedian. Cedric the Entertainer used to open for him back in the day. And he would be an incredible asset for what they're doing. Well,
I hear you, Mr. King, and but this committee is on chronic absenteeism and student attendance. This is not the whole education committee that would be working on policy for other things peripheral in education from what we're doing. So that I think what you're talking about there is for a later date. Yeah.
We're not excited about what's going on at school either.
Right. Right. And
It's asked one question for the DOE, real quick, just for data. It goes to one of the recommend officials or not.
Matt and your team, do you guys have by district current open and unfilled positions for nurses, counselors? I'm just curious to get to the pipeline, because I know I got a text while we were here that they've got 2 open unfilled positions and they're having trouble finding social workers. So that was just a FYI. The pipeline is an issue, is the point. Just wonder if we've got statewide data.
well, why don't you work for that, since you're not at Mike, with Dr. Barra there, and we'll get that information. Thank you. Committee members, we've been nice to provide you lunch. It's in 605 room right next door here to us for you to get at this time. And we're right on time. We will adjourn the meeting then. Thank you very much for your efforts. Safe travels.